Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. It's time for Longhorn Weekly, a little bit of a look back, but more so a look ahead, setting the table for the week to come on the 40 acres. And I'd like to thank our sponsor for this edition of Longhorn Weekly. That is Tackle Addict. Tackle Addict is brought to you by lifetime Longhorns Brian Robinson and Brandon Belt. Get over to tackleaddict.com. Owned and operated by former Longhorn Brian Robinson and Longhorn baseball great Brandon Belt. Tackle Addict has everything you need for the best in today's fishing equipment. Tackle Addict is for the everyday fishermen and serious pros alike. Get their products shipped to you directly from the stores of Lake Sam Rayburn. That's tackleaddict.com. Tackle, TACKLE-ADDICT.com. And Brian and Brandon say, thank you to Tackle Addict for sponsoring this edition of Longhorn Weekly. CJ, are you well rested from your travels to Indy?
I am. I'm glad to be back. No more need for the big overcoat. You know, I'm glad it's about 75 degrees out here in Austin. It's nice to be warm again.
Glad you can put the parka away. So we have actually a combine recap video up on the channel. You can go check that out for some of the positions we're not going to cover. CJ, the one group we didn't cover in that combine recap was the offensive linemen because they hadn't worked out yet, hadn't gone through their measurements. And the one guy we'll talk about is Kelvin Banks, because you were at Kelvin Banks' media availability, and he was peppered question after question after question about kicking inside the guard. And I've said throughout this whole draft process so far, I think it's silly. I think it's ridiculous. Maybe you kick him inside the guard if tackle doesn't work out, but Kelvin Banks is a tackle. That skill set translates to the National Football League. A lot of mock drafts, you'll see maybe LSU's Will Campbell ahead of Kelvin Banks. But CJ, after the measurables in Indy, now you're hearing, hey, does Will Campbell need to kick inside the guard? I think all that talk is foolish, but CJ, those boxes got checked in a big way for Kelvin Banks in Indy with his height, his arm length, his wingspan. He's got an NFL tackle body, and there's no question about that now.
Yeah, of course, you see the comparisons here in the measurements between Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell. What's the big outlier is the wingspan and the arm length, right? Both of those going in the direction of Kelvin Banks. But on top of just this conversation we're having, Jeff, it's been a lot of noise, really, about Kelvin Banks and what he might be at the next level, which I totally agree with you. I don't know why this is starting to pop up the way it has. Not just have we watched 3 years of Kelvin Banks be an absolute wall at the left tackle position while going up against some of the country's best edge rushers in his 3 years. From the start of his college career as well. But it's been surprising. And he tested well. He did a very solid job in his verts and his broad. He had a 5.17 in the 40, which that's fine in my opinion. It's not world blazing, right? He said he wanted to go sub 5, but again, that's a tough thing to do. But the height, the weight, 6'5" and an 1/8, you take that at all times, as well as the 84-inch wingspan is kind of where you look at and say, okay, he's going to be able to have that necessary arm length on the perimeter there at a left tackle or even right tackle. But I thought for sure he checked each box that was kind of a concern coming into Indianapolis. And again, when you compare him to Will Campbell, you see there the longer the wingspan certainly goes in favor of Kelvin Banks.
Yeah, I still like my plan for Kelvin Banks to the 49ers. Start him at right tackle. Trent Williams retires. You've already drafted your left tackle, but I think Kelvin Banks solidified himself as probably a top of the first round type guy, top half of the first round. CJ, we knew Jahdae Barron was already there after his 40-yard dash time. Matthew Golden runs that 4.29. Texas hasn't had 3 guys go in the first round since 1980. It sounds like that streak is going to come to an end.
I agree. Absolutely. And again, that was my big concern for Matthew Golden. I did not know, and I don't think many expected a 4.29, 4.3 for him in his first 40-yard dash. But look, I've said it for the last month or so. When it comes to wide receivers in the first round, you need that one elite quality trait. I don't think many expected that 4.3 for Matthew Golden, but to come in and run that, there's your elite trait on top of the route running, on top of the production, on top of the 9.5-inch hands at wide receiver. He's the complete package right now, and to go in the first round, I think is an absolute lock right now. I said go ahead and book your plane ticket up to Green Bay for April 24th because I think you're going to be invited to that green room, Jeff.
Yeah.
But he absolutely checked the box there and comes away with maybe the winner of the combine.
Yeah, no question. And we'll wrap up our combine talk with this. Bobby Burton had a really good post over at ontexasfootball.com, his Monday column, basically reiterated that, hey, this weekend on NFL Network, their combine coverage, it was pretty much an infomercial for Texas football. It's been a long time. And CJ, maybe not in my lifetime that Texas has gotten this kind of draft coverage. They've had guys here and there individually, certainly when, you go back to when Ricky Williams came out, when Vince Young came out, but this many guys to do this well at the combine. And it's interesting to see a lot of people from other fan bases, particularly those schools across the state of Texas, kind of in their fields now that Texas is developing talent, competing for championships, putting guys in the NFL. It's a really good time to be a Longhorn fan right now. CJ, 14 guys at the combine. We talked about 3 guys in the first round. Are they going to have double-digit guys drafted this year? It certainly seems that way, at least, and a bulk of those guys are probably going to be top 100 picks. But, CJ, again, it's nice to see Texas guys go to the combine. And, again, the 2 downers. One was Gunnar Helm's 40 time, and then we find out that that was a pretty hellacious MRI, not the MRI image, but a pretty hellacious view of his ankle for a just rolling it a little bit. It was Gunnar Helm's 40, which he can redeem himself for that at the pro day. And then had Isaiah Bond and Jaden Blue just not called their shots, we'd be talking about, hey, both guys ended up running in the 4.3s, which are great times any way you slice it. CJ, all told, couldn't have gone better for those 14 guys in Indy.
Yeah, it is funny. The headlines coming in and out of the combine were the predictions of the 40s from both Blue and Bond. And again, to your point, had maybe that comment not been said by either, look, 4.38, 4.39. That's fast, right? That's the second fastest running back time for Jaden Blue. You take that if you're him. Of course, that comp that we've kind of loosely thrown out there to Jahmyr Gibbs in terms of measurables and testing, 4.36 for Gibbs, 4.38 for Blue. That's kind of what you hope to put on tape for these scouts at the combine. Bond again, and I know the 4.39 for him is something that he's probably not going to be too thrilled with. And to your point about Helm, he can certainly make that up at the pro day. But Bond will be walking away, Jeff, with the second fastest, overall top end miles per hour speed at the combine, north of 24 miles per hour, right? That is a big notch in his belt in terms of what he can bring to the field. So overall, again, Barron Sorrell, great day. Alfred Collins did very well in the on-field. The testing numbers are there for the Texas speed. Now, of course, they'll get to back it up once more in Austin on the pro day, March 26th.
Yeah, and spring practice starts on the 25th, and we're talking about Isaiah Bond. We're talking about Matthew Golden. That leads us into the current team going through conditioning, getting ready for spring practice, again, a couple of weeks away. CJ, you had an interesting note last week, and that'll take us into this week. If you missed coffee and football, go around to like the 1 hour and 14-minute mark. Bobby and Jerry had a really good conversation towards the end of coffee and football Monday morning about some of the Texas newcomers. Jerry mentions those wide receivers. There was some talk about James Simon, Grayson Littleton, and some other guys. But CJ, you had a Jamie French note. And when we talk about who's going to be next in line to replace Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond, we know DeAndre Moore is a proven commodity. Ryan Wingo's a proven commodity. Jamie French, this wide receiver class getting pretty good reviews already, but I'll let you expound on the Jamie French note. I think there was no question when he committed to Texas. We all thought Texas hit a home run, and he hasn't disappointed since he's gotten to campus.
Yeah, no doubt at all, Jeff. I mean, the return so far have exceeded expectations for Jamie French. I've been told that he's a little bit larger in person than expected coming into Austin, and that top-end speed is certainly there. And again, continuing that conversation from the combine, especially over the last 2 years, speed is a necessity at wide receiver for Texas. Right now, French doing a great job on the field, but also picking up the playbook off the field. And I think that's one of those things in a Sarkisian, Chris Jackson offense. If you're at wide receiver and you can't pick up kind of the nuances of where to line up, where to run your routes, what yards you need to get to on breaks, whatnot, it's going to be a long path to the field for you. So far, really, really solid start to his career in Austin for Jamie French. I've also heard the same for Daniel McCutcheon. And I think he might be the one wide receiver of the three that kind of gets lost by the wayside. He's had a great start to his Texas career as well. But one other guy I wanted to mention, just in the sense that, I heard some great things behind the scene. Grayson Littleton making some noise. Mm-hmm. Of course, there is some history right now with him and Mark Orfe. Orfe did offer him a scholarship while he was at Rutgers out of the state of Florida, Wiregrass Ranch High School. So they have some history there. Let's see how quickly they can get acclimated to one another. But so far, a solid start for him as well.
Grayson Littleton really does get lost in the shuffle because I almost forget he's there because he was added to the class so late, and really he didn't emerge on the scene as a target for Texas until later in the process. And by that point, everybody's so focused on Cade Phillips, especially with the late flip from LSU. But yeah, don't forget Grayson Littleton's on campus. Santana Wilson coming off a redshirt year. We saw a little bit of Wardell Mack Plenty of talent in that secondary, like you said, from Mark Orfe, Kenoto Hudson, getting elevated from analyst to Nichols coach. And then obviously Dwayne Akina coming back into the program to coach safety. CJ, let's stick with recruiting. We mentioned recruiting a little bit right there. We'll stick with it. Again, Jerry and I looked at some prospects. There's a video up on the channel right now looking at guys on the offensive side of the ball, just kind of a 30,000-foot view. But CJ, the quiet period started at midnight on Sunday. Now this week, that means guys can come to your campus. Coaches can do everything except they just can't recruit off campus right now. We know there's 2 big visit weekends for recruits since, the Fan Appreciation Day. I keep wanting to call it the spring game, but it's the Fan Appreciation Day. March 29th and April 12th are going to be the 2 big visit weekends, the 2 big recruiting weekends for this staff during spring practice. And then it's really to set the table for June official visit. So CJ, I'll give you the floor for this. Give us a couple of guys, a couple big-time targets that haven't set official visits yet that you feel like Texas needs to get those locked in sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's 3, maybe 4 that come to mind first. The first is Tyler Atkinson, the linebacker out of Georgia. Look, 5-star guy all the way through. Texas very high on him. They made several trips out to Georgia to go see him in person while they were able to get on the road. If he's not the number 1 guy on the board, Jeff, he's as close to that number 1 spot as possible. He needs to get on campus just to see a familiar face, right? Go see Johnny Nansen, see PK, see Steve Sarkisian again. And that's kind of the big thing here is next time that these recruits are on campus, let's hope Steve Sarkisian is not under the weather, because that would be big in terms of getting that next step for a lot of these guys. But Atkinson's certainly in that conversation. Get on campus and then set up an official visit. So far, no officials to Texas or anybody, I believe, have been set up for the 5-star linebacker. On top of that, Derek Cooper, the number 1 running back in the country out of Florida as well. We've talked about Chad Scott coming to Texas, taking over that running back role and needing to fill the large shoes of Tashard Choice. Well, Choice visited Derek Cooper in January before he took the Lions job. We did report that Scott had been in contact with Cooper after taking the job about 2 or 3 days into the job. So you could tell right there, that's a guy that I think Sarkisian pointed at and said, get in contact with him, because we want him. So he needs to get to campus as well. And then the last one of the 2, Naeem Burrows, Tristan Keys. Texas, again, you've seen Jamie French, Khalid Kalak, 2 5-star level guys. Ryan Wingo added that mix. Who's going to be the 5-star guy in this class? Right now, Naeem Burrows is kind of that guy for me, but Tristan Keys, a heck of a prospect as well. We'll see if either gets to campus and sets up an OV before the summer months.
So real quick, as we wrap up here, baseball and softball, shout out to Jim Schlossnagel and the baseball team, swept 3 games in Vegas over the weekend. They haven't lost since losing that Friday night game in Arlington to Louisville. They've been on a tear, beat Washington, beat Texas Tech on Saturday, and then a comeback win. They were down 6-1 at one point to Illinois and ended up winning that game 15-6, just blew out the Illini with an onslaught on Sunday. See, it's good to know, CJ, that this lineup still, it started under David Pierce and it's going to continue under Schloss. By the time you get to Sunday in a series, this offense is too good. They will murder Sunday pitching on your number 3 starter, and by the time your bullpen wears down. And then softball, shout out to Mike White's team getting their 20th win, clean sweep in the Longhorn Invitational over the weekend. If you want to see the softball, if you want to see baseball, Tuesday night at home against A&M Corpus, and then a 3-game series Friday through Sunday against Santa Clara. For softball, your only chance to get out to McCombs Field is going to be on Wednesday, 6 o'clock against Baylor, making the trip down from Waco for a one-off. And then the softball team, they're in Columbus this weekend for the Ohio State tournament. And then CJ, starting on the 15th, they start an absolutely brutal SEC schedule. Every weekend is going to feel like a super regional playing softball in the SEC at Florida, the number 3 ranked team in the country. So it's going to be a while before you can see softball. So if you want to see Mike White's crew, get out to McCombs Field. But CJ, unfortunately, we got to talk about men's basketball. Before we do that, though, let's get the good out of the way. Shout out to Vic Schaefer and the Texas women. They finished up a 15-1 season in SEC play, split the SEC regular season championship with South Carolina. It's a co-championship. Look, folks, I was at Moody Center on Sunday. That trophy is very real. It says University of Texas on it. So call it a co-championship, however you want to slice it. That trophy and that net Vic Schaefer and company cut down on Sunday, it's going to be in the facility forever and ever in perpetuity. So they lost the coin flip to South Carolina for the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament. But as Vic Schaefer said, as much as this team has been through, they really don't care who they play, when they play them, where they play them. They're battle tested, ready for March Madness, and an undefeated regular season at home. CJ, they'll have a couple of NCAA tournament games, but a chance for the Texas women to go undefeated at Moody Center this year. That would be a heck of an accomplishment. Let's talk about the men. A loss to Georgia, an 83-67 loss to Georgia on Saturday. They've got a trip to Starkville to take on Mississippi State on Tuesday, and then finish the regular season. Can it still be death taxes and Rodney Terry beating Oklahoma? Texas basketball, even Shaka Smart. Shaka got plenty of wins over Oklahoma. Texas has OU's number in men's basketball. We'll see if that continues. But CJ, you look at the South Carolina loss, a game against Arkansas that they had, that was a very winnable game that slipped away late. And then a game against Georgia where, quite frankly, it just looked like they didn't show up. I was being generous when I wrote my article at ontexasfootball.com after the game that Texas might be stuck on the wrong side of the NCAA tournament bubble. CJ, at this point, short of winning the SEC tournament, I don't see a path to March Madness for Rodney Terry's club. Jerry and I have talked about it. It's a shame that we might get an NCAA tournament without Trey Johnson. And I had the note on Sunday, don't expect to hear anything from Chris Del Conte about Rodney Terry's job status until the season is over. CJ, I'm just going to let you offer some encouraging words, anything Longhorn Nation might need to hear right now about the Texas men's basketball program, other than, hey, softball, baseball, and women's hoops are killing it right now. Maybe go check out one of those other sports, but it's if you're a Longhorn men's basketball fan, CJ, it's a rough go of it right now.
Yeah, I don't know how else to put it other than not making the NCAA tournament this year is a complete disappointment, right? You were active in the portal. You brought in some big names. You have one of, if not the best scorers in all of the country in Trey Johnson, who's playing out of his mind and needing to carry the load for a team that brought in a lot of veteran pieces who just haven't been able to kind of live up to the expectation so far. It's a complete disappointment to not make the tournament this year if you're Rodney Terry. Again, this is supposed to be the year that you take the step. You got the talent out of the portal. You have the superstar in Trey Johnson. Mm-hmm. And to lay 2 straight eggs at the end of the season when you needed to come out and play in must-win games, you can't defend that. I don't think anybody can defend that, especially at home when you have half of the Moody Center departing from their seats with about 4 or 5 minutes left because they know there's just no way they're coming back from 20 points down. It's disappointing. It's unfortunate. Texas basketball deserves better. The Texas fans deserve better. I don't know what else to say other than, you got 2 games left. What kind of fight do you show and what kind of chips need to fall to get into the tournament? Right now, I think it's too tall a task. And again, to not see Trey Johnson in March, barring what could be a very improbable run to the SEC championship game, Jeff, it's unfortunate. It's a shame.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I have fun watching Vic Schaefer's team because even if shots aren't falling, they still play really hard for 40 minutes. That's all I'm asking from Rodney Terry's crew right now. Don't come out and, Devon Pryor, hey, he didn't pass the buck. He said, yeah, we came out flat. Georgia had a better sense of urgency. From the opening tip, just go compete for 40 minutes and let the chips fall where they may. That's all I'm asking for at this point. And you're not going to win very many games where Trey Johnson doesn't have a field goal attempt in the second half. I don't know if that's the coaches need to tell him to be more assertive or just them drawing up more stuff to get him the ball in advantageous situations. Credit Georgia and Mike White's staff. They were trapping him. They were making it really hard for him to get loose off screens. So credit them for that. But the Texas women will be in action in Greenville, South Carolina in the SEC tournament in their quarterfinal on Friday night. If you haven't watched the Texas women, go watch the Texas women. You'll at least appreciate the effort and then hope that effort gets applied. CJ, in a game on Saturday, that regular season finale, that's an old school wrestling angle. That's a loser leaves town match between Rodney Terry and Porter Moser. That's 2 coaches right now that don't have a ton of job security. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens on Saturday, but we will get you covered. If we don't have it here on the channel, we'll have you covered over at ontexasfootball.com. And right now, get over to the site, use the promo code OTFOG. If you're not a subscriber, use the promo code OTFOG we'll get you $49.95 for a 1-year subscription to ontexasfootball.com. We've got spring practice coming up. We've got spring recruiting, summer official visits, all the team action leading up to camp, and then the season. You're not going to want to miss any of it, and we'll have it all for you at ontexasfootball.com. So get over to the website and check it out and get that $49.95 discount for a year. Use the promo code OTFOG. So stay locked into the channel. Stay locked into ontexasfootball.com for the week to come on the 40 Acres. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. And until next time, hook 'em.
Welcome.